So I watched all of my videos and I always start with, hi guys. Hi guys, it's me again. Um, we are actually on part 7 of our book Posted. This is starting on page 53 and we're on a new chapter. It's called The Promise. So page 53. The round tables in the lunchroom had space for 5 chairs, 6 if you crammed, but most tables didn't bother to cram. Only the tables with the most popular kids were crowded. We only ever used 4. We formed a perfect square, somehow meeting at the corners. Dee Dee and Wolf met all the way back in elementary school, spending their recesses together, avoiding pickup kickball games, and hiding behind the slides from bigger kids, trading Pokemon cards and splitting Oreos. But middle school jammed us together. Together we knew a little bit about just about everything. Benj had kissed a girl, not on a dare. Dee Dee had visited Paris and India and had pictures of himself grinning in front of the Arc de Triomphe and the Taj Mahal. Wolf had hiked down into the Grand Canyon, though he said all he remembered was his parents arguing about who didn't bring enough water. He had also been stung by a jellyfish. I'd been to Disney World and already had my wisdom teeth pulled. Together we had already broken most major bones: legs, arms, fingers, toes, collar, ribs. We filled in each other's gaps. We sometimes completed each other's sentences, but usually with burps and other gross sounds just to annoy each other. We spent most of our time together hanging out after school, playing video games, watching ridiculous videos, or seeing how many Sour Patch Kids Wolf could chew at once without drooling. Sometimes we'd grab a ball and play horse in Benj's driveway. He always won. Or take our bikes and ride down to Mr. Twisty's, our favorite soft-serve ice cream place, where you could mix in whatever candy you wanted and where half of the summer allowance went. But most of the time, if we weren't battling hordes of Dee Dee's demon spawn, we just hung out and talked. Not like talk, nothing serious, just regular talk about stuff. YouTube videos and homework and other kids. The lamest superpowers in the world, Mel Wonder Twins' bucket of water trick hands down, and how to best make weapons out of rubber bands and paper clips. If you were having a thoroughly craptastic day, you'd be allowed to vent using all kinds of words that would never get back to your parents. But I wouldn't say we really talked about feelings or whatever. It was okay to have feelings just as long as you kept them mostly to yourself, which was fine by me. Sometimes we talked about girls, but not often. More like how you talk about presidents and movie stars with a kind of guarded detachment, careful never to admit too much. Not that we didn't know any girls, that is. Benj especially had a few he made a point of saying hi to in the halls. And Dee Dee had several he admired from afar. Just that as far as our crew went, it was always just us boys. And there was kind of this unspoken promise that it would stay that way, just us, forever. I know what I'm doing. I'm trying to justify what happened, how I acted, how we all acted, but me especially. You're not going to buy it, though, because it wasn't just that Rose Holland was a girl, and that's no excuse anyways. It's that she was who she was, and we were who we were, and there had always ever only been 4. I didn't see Rose in either of my next 2 classes. I heard her name whispered once or twice. I figured it was none of my business, so I tried not to listen. Right before heading to the cafeteria for lunch, I stopped by my locker to find another note from Dee Dee stuck to the door. The 4th one that morning, counting the one in English, all presumably from the same yellow pad. This one just said breadsticks. Underneath was a smiley face, just in case the exclamation point didn't give it away. Dee Dee only got school lunch on Breadsticks Day. He still showed up with his Lord of the Rings lunchbox, but he ignored the sandwich that was packed inside. He was a garlic fiend, and the butter the lunch lady slathered those sticks in could slay a coven of vampires. I stuck the note to Dee Dee's forehead 5 minutes later as Benj and I sat down at our table. If you leave me any more of these, I'm going to start demanding that you take my calls and fetch my coffee, I said. He stuck one in my locker too, Benj said. Wolf held up 6 fingers. He wrote you 6 notes? One of them just had a drawing of a whale on it, Wolf said. It was an airplane. I was bored in math. Excuse me for sharing. Dee Dee peeled the sticky note from his forehead. I would text you, but, you know. He held up empty, phoneless hands. Day 2 of the Great Confiscation had gone only slightly better than day 1, with only one student, Becca Benchman, practicing a form of nonviolent protest and going limp in the hallway, having to be dragged to first period by her armpits. In his phone's absence, Dee Dee was making do with what he had. They make us buy 4 packs of those stupid things at the start of every year, and we don't need them for any of our classes, so I figured why not put them to good use? I think we need to define what qualifies as good use, I said. And teach you how to draw, Wolf added. Bench elbowed me, and I followed his eyes to the end of the lunch line. Rose Holland was standing there, tray in hand, surveying the landscape again. I felt bad for her. I'd been in that same spot. I watched as she approached the closest table of girls, then noticed Beth Strands from English, the one who'd scooted her chair away, look up. She must have had a nasty look on her face because Rose immediately stared around and wandered toward the corner. That was Beth's superpower. She could wither you with a glance. The witherer. Some people were just like that. There were quite a few empty tables, though. Rose would find a place to sit. I turned back to Dee Dee, who was telling a story about a kid in band who got caught with his phone. He panicked when the teacher came in and tried to hide it in his tuba. Sounds like something you would do, I teased. Dee Dee pretended to be offended. I play the trumpet, remember? A phone wouldn't fit. Dee Dee played in the school band, mostly because his parents insisted on it. Wolf refused to play in the school band on the grounds that they sucked, though he would never tell Dee Dee that. Honestly, they sounded like a herd of dying giraffes being chased by a pack of howler monkeys. Dee Dee wadded up his sticky notes, breadsticks, and flicked it across the table. He was aiming for me. Instead, it landed in my applesauce cup. 2 points, Wolf said. Actually, the other side of the table is 3-point territory, Bench corrected. It was a lucky shot, I said, picking the dripping, wadded yellow ball from the cup and flicking it back. This is what lunchtime usually looked like for us. Building towers out of milk cartons, stuffing veggie straws up our noses, flicking things at each other. You couldn't do it again in a million tries, I dared. It was a safe bet. Dee Dee made Bench look like Cam Newton most days. Fine, but if I do, I get your last breadstick, he said, pointing at my tray. I agreed. Most of the time, I ended up giving him one anyway. Dee Dee lined up the wadded ball of paper, closed one eye, and gave it another flick. This time it sailed high and wide, up over my shoulder. I heard it hit something with a little wet slap. You got me! Dee Dee's face went ash white, which was kind of remarkable given his Indian heritage. I jerked around to see Rose Holland standing beside our table, looming over us, her tray sporting only a package of cheese and peanut butter crackers and a chocolate milk. There was a splotch of applesauce on her black sweater the size of a quarter, like a gunshot, just below her shoulder. Oh man, I'm so sorry, Dee Dee blathered, suddenly bug-eyed, trying to shrink behind his lunchbox, probably afraid of that carton of milk being smashed over his head, which is exactly what somebody like Jason Baker or Cameron Cole would do. But Rose just looked at her sweater and shrugged, then rubbed the spot of sauce in with her thumb. Got it at a garage sale, she said. It's seen worse. She was standing between me and Wolf, and I could see now that the sweater was frayed at the bottom, her jeans worn at the knees, the laces of her boots equally ragged at the ends. She was even more imposing up close. Rose looked at the only empty chair at our table, then back at her tray. I flicked my eyes around the room, trying not to be obvious. There was still plenty of empty seats. In fact, there was an empty table 3 down from us. That's probably where she had been going when she got hit. Dee Dee and his terrible aim. You're in my English class, she said, looking at me first, holding her tray close. 3 of you, anyways. And you, I have history together. She glanced at Bench. It's JJ, right? Bench nodded, lips tight. It was the face he used whenever other people's parents tried to talk to him, a half smile barely hiding its phoniness. He looked over his shoulder at a cluster of tables full of other 8th graders twittering away. Dee Dee watched the pseudo-nacho cheese congeal in his plastic cup. I looked at the empty chair. Don't say anything. I thought to myself, that's how it worked. Don't say anything one way or another, and you don't have to take responsibility one way or the other, and everything goes on like normal. She will just keep walking. Wolf thought differently, though. He gestured to the empty chair. Want to sit with us? Dee Dee coughed, or choked, I couldn't tell which. I suddenly became aware of all the sounds in the lunchroom, the cling-clang from the kitchen, the scrape of chairs along the floor, the constant buzzing of 100 voices talking at once. I held my breath, waiting for the new girl to realize that Wolf was just being polite. Because that's the kind of person he is. And to do the equally polite thing and decline the offer. A casual, no thanks, some other time maybe. I thought you'd never ask, Rose said. She set her tray down and pulled out the chair. Suddenly, we weren't square anymore. The strangeness of it hit me, like how sometimes you're on the bus taking the same exact route that you've taken 100 times before, with every coffee shop and neighborhood sign memorized, but you look up and you are certain that the bus has taken a wrong turn because everything seems unfamiliar, and it takes you a moment to get your bearings. Bench and I looked at each other. For 2 years, we'd sat at the same table together. Never once had a girl sat down next to us. But Rose Holland didn't seem to care. She settled into her seat and proceeded to unwrap her crackers, the crinkle of the package much louder than it should have been. I tried to read Wolf's face to see if he thought he miscalculated, if his plan to do the right thing had backfired. But he didn't give anything away, just went back to eating his lunch, maybe even smiling a little. Dee Dee, on the other hand, couldn't stop staring. It's breadstick day, he mumbled after 10 seconds of awkward silence, as if confirming that there was something abnormal about the girl who didn't like garlic butter-soaked lumps of bread stretched to look like some grandmother's gnarly fingers. I'm on a strict diet, Rose Holland explained. She had a raspy sort of voice. It seemed to fit her. Of peanut butter crackers? Dee Dee asked. Of foods that stick to the roof of your mouth, she replied, stuffing the first of the crackers in her mouth. She chewed in slow motion. It seemed as if she were afraid of making too much noise, then wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Maybe she was nervous too. We all watched silently, like a girl eating crackers was the most fascinating things we'd ever seen. Finally, Rose cleared her throat and leaned across the table, the package in her hand. If you want one, all you have to do is ask. She thrust the crackers at each of us in turn. I blushed and looked down. Bench looked away as well, taking an interest in conversations at other tables that he couldn't even hear. Dee Dee fiddled with his milk carton. Only Wolf managed to find the words, no thanks. But even he could sense it, I could tell. The disruption of the natural order of the universe after another 20 seconds of awkward as walking in on your dad shaving naked in the bathroom quiet. Rose set her crackers down, leaned back in her chair, and let out a sigh. Okay, she said, I'm guessing you're all new to this girl at the table thing. How about this? I promise that I won't bite you or give you cooties or whatever else it is that you are flipping out over. I won't talk about my hair or blather on and on about celebrity heartthrobs or all the girls I hate because, frankly, I've only been here for 3 hours, which isn't quite enough time to hate anybody yet. I won't discuss brands of moisturizers or lip gloss or use the word crush in any kind of non-destructive capacity. And in return, you can stop looking at me like I'm some deranged lunatic. How does that sound? Rose Holland smiled, and I noticed the freckles on her nose, so light and small, not like the constellations on Wolf's cheeks. Her eyes really were kind of pretty. Not that I would ever say such a thing out loud to anyone, especially not her. Surprisingly, Dee Dee was the first to speak up. We don't really talk to girls, he admitted. I mean, we can talk to them, just not, about them to them. Not that we do talk to them, not usually. His voice trailed off. Don't listen to Dee Dee, Wolf said. He lives in his own little fantasy world. We are perfectly capable of talking to girls. Then he proceeded to not say anything else. Okay, so we're going to stop right there, head over to Schoology, and let's have a discussion.